So I'll begin. Today's topic will be just a revision of whatever we are doing. So we'll begin fresh from understanding what the ECG is and how do we see each waves and what each thing indicates. Okay, don't be a revision. We'll start fresh. Okay. Fine. Let's begin. You can put your questions in the chat box. I'll answer it at the end of the session. We'll try to keep it simple and easy to understand. Let's begin. So this is one of my favorite quotes. You can read it later. So let's start beginning to understand what the ECG is. So these are my contents. I'll talk a little about the history of the electrocardiograph, the most important thing to understand about the ECG paper, the conduction system of the heart, the waves and the intervals, and we'll see some question answers. Okay, we will begin. So this is the early ECG that was done. So we all know that ECG was first discovered by Röntgen. So these are the first ECG that was done. So you see the ECG apparatus, it is really huge, and there are two leads. So these two are compartments where this acted as a electrical conductor or lead to record the first ECG. And it is surprising to see that the initial ECG that Einthoven recorded and the current ECG is almost similar in nature. So that was the acumen that Einthoven had. Okay. So this is about the brief history of the ECG. So names to remember is Mary. So Mary analyzed electrical activity in a frog's heart. So that gave insight to Einthoven to further invent the ECG, and he used it in the humans. So he diagnosed it to diagnose some heart problems in 1906. And important is this: he's given the Nobel Prize for physiology. Also, there is one more scientist called Goldberger. He has also made some contributions to the leads, especially the augmented leads, AVR, AVL, AVF. They are credited to Dr. Goldberger. Okay. Fine. So coming to the ECG paper. So if we see the ECG paper, so I'll highlight what is seen. So we are seeing some red boxes. So among the red boxes, there is some which are very dark here. Inside there are some light boxes. Okay. So we'll call these as large boxes. These are called as large boxes conventionally, and this is called a small box. Okay. So we will highlight each box and see what happens inside. Okay. Before coming to that, we'll see some of the technical details how an ECG is done. So ECG is done via a paper that moves at the rate of 25 millimeter per second. So this is the normal rate at which the paper moves. Okay, and it is standardized such that every 10 millimeter. So if this is a 10 millimeter, so this is 10 millimeter. This whole 10 millimeter will be equal to 1 millivolt. So this is the basic first thing that has to be noted when you see an ECG. So you see the speed at which the paper is moving, which is important, and you see the standardization, which is the amplitude. Okay, 10 millimeter is 1 millivolt. Why is that important? We will see. So we'll see one box. So this is one whole huge box that we said, one large box. So if you see in that, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, and 5. So similarly, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is 5. So this is 5 by 5, which is 25. So this whole thing here, so it is mentioned here, this whole thing is 5 millimeter, which means that if I take one single box, this would be 1/5 of the total, which is 1 millimeter. So this whole thing is 1 millimeter. This whole thing is 1 millimeter, and this also is 1 millimeter, because here it is 5 millimeter in the horizontal plane as well as in the y-axis. Okay. So 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter is one small box, and 5 millimeter by 5 millimeter is one large box. So remember this, we'll proceed to the next thing. So the same thing. So whenever we are measuring some activities, we take it with respect to the x-axis, which is always representing time. So whenever you are You want to look for the time duration, you look in the x-axis. You want to look at amplitude, you look in the y-axis. So that is what is mentioned here, amplitude and time. Okay. So normal is here that is mentioned, which is 10 millimeter is 1 millivolt, and 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter is 1 small square. Okay. So if I take 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter is one small box, so we know that the ECG moves at 25 millimeter per second. So which means that 25 millimeters moved in 1 second. So that means 1 millimeter will be equal to how many seconds? It is 1 by 25, which is 0.04 seconds. 0.04 second means here it is given, which is 40 milliseconds. So 1 millimeter here in the horizontal or in the x-axis is 40 milliseconds. Okay. So if this is clear, we'll proceed to the next point, which is coming to the calculation of heart rate. I'll come to the slide once more again. Okay. So to calculate heart rate, we take the QRS complexes, which means that the heart rate is a measure of the ventricular activity. Okay. So when we come to the what each wave is, this will be more clear. Okay. So for now, you remember that this is the numbers to remember. If you remember this number, it becomes easy to calculate heart rate. So we'll have a practice at the end, how to calculate heart rate. Okay. So you see here, you see the first thing, technical issues. So this is all okay. So once I've seen this, so I want to calculate the heart rate. So how do we calculate the heart rate is in this manner. So the QRS complex is a measure of the electrical ventricular activity. So if I take one QRS here and the next QRS to be here, so the number of large boxes, which are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are the 4 large boxes in between 2 QRS complexes. So that means to calculate the heart rate, there is a simple formula which is 300 divided by the RR interval. When we take 300, we take the RR interval in large boxes. So how much is the number of large boxes here? Large boxes is 4. That means 75. This is the heart rate. So the heart rate is 75 here. Okay. So that is what I meant here by showing this. You see this one. So if the QRS is here, and we got 4 small boxes, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the QRS was here. So we had to cross 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we used the formula and calculated. But if you remember these values, 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, and 50, this much is sufficient. The reason why you remember these values, it is very quick at the bedside to say the approximate heart rate. The heart rate, when you calculate very specifically, let's say you calculate at 62, and the exact heart rate roughly you get is somewhere around 60. Does it make any clinical difference? Not at all. So the clinical difference is whether I have a tachycardia or a bradycardia. So that is all that we are looking at when we are looking at the heart rate. And you compare it in the clinical scenario. Patient has an obstructive jaundice and you are seeing the heart rate at around 50. So that time it becomes significant. This heart rate explains the obstructive jaundice. So that's how we correlate. So specific values, very minute calculation does not really make much of a clinical significance. But it is good to know the exact way how it is calculated. But to remember these values, so it will be easy to calculate the approximate heart rate, which makes it clinically relevant. So this is how we derive it. If you are wondering from where we got this 300, it is pretty simple. Okay, so we have 1 minute. Okay, so 1 minute is 60 seconds. So if I multiply that 60 by 1000, I get that value in milliseconds. Okay, so I take that 60 and I should divide it by the RR interval, because RR interval represents the ventricular rate. Also remember, if I want to calculate the atrial rate, so we will see what each wave represents. So that time it will become easier. Okay, So the atrial rate is represented by the PP interval. So one P wave to the other P wave, if I take, so this interval gives me the PP interval, which is the atrial rate. So usually the atrial rate and ventricular rate will almost be same because every impulse that arrives in the atria gets conducted to the ventricle. Whenever there is a discrepancy, that means there is some dysfunction at the level of the SA node. That is what we have to remember. Okay. So this value, you can just by heart, as you keep practicing, you will be able to easily remember these values. So the 6,000, 60,000. So each large box I said you is 200 millisecond because it is 40 millisecond into 5, which is 200. So if I divide it by that, I get this value, which is 300 divided by the RR interval, which we commonly use. Or if I'm taking small squares, each small box is 40. We saw 1 by 25, which is 40. So that time I use this 1500 divided by the RR interval if these small boxes are used. Okay. The same thing. So that becomes easier. So if I'm taking the small boxes, I'll use 1500 divided by the RR interval. If I'm taking large boxes, I'll take 300 divided by the RR interval. Until now, it's clear? Until now, is it clear? Everyone understood what is happening? Okay, fine. So I'll go to the next concept, which is the important concept, without which we can't understand what is happening at the level of the heart, which is the conduction system of the heart. So conduction system of the heart, we'll begin with the SA node. So the SA node is the first component, is the pacemaker of the heart. The reason why it is called pacemaker is because it fires at the maximum rate, which is 60 to 100. That is why our heart rate is said to be 60 to 100 is the normal. So from the SA node is situated in the junction between the SVC and the right atrium, the posterior wall. So from the SA node, initially the right atrium is activated, followed by that the left atrium is activated via, this is the important thing to remember, which is the Bachmann's bundle. Okay. So this is one more thing you have to remember, which is the Bachmann's fascicle. Okay. So from there, it reaches the electrical window. Each of these internodal tracts have a name. One is called Wenckebach, middle one, posterior one is called as Thorels. So they reach the AV node. Okay. So once they reach the AV node, from there is a His bundle that arises. Okay. So AV node is an electrical window. So it slows down whatever impulse that is going to come. It slows down such that the ventricle is in the diastole at that point of time. So there is enough filling of blood. Because once the AV node is getting activated, the impulse next goes and activates the ventricle, and there is going to be contraction of the ventricle. Just there's to be if there is going to be a contraction of the ventricle, that means there should be enough blood for it to get pumped. Okay, so that is why I want you to remember this. And very important, this is a recent theory that is there. This left bundle that is there is going to divide into a left anterior fascicle, left posterior fascicle. This everyone knows. There's a new theory that is proposed, which is called as left septal fascicle. Okay, it is not a theory; it has been documented in the autopsy studies about the existence of a left septal fascicle. Large-scale studies have been done, and they have shown the presence of a left septal fascicle. Okay, so that is about the left bundle branch. So whenever we have a right bundle branch, the right bundle branch further divides and gives final Purkinje fibers, and then there is rapid conduction and there is activation of the myocardium. So this is what is going to happen. Okay, and always remember the conduction through the His Purkinje system is very rapid because the Purkinje system is a very fast conducting system. So if there is any impulse coming somewhere from the His bundle, any impulse arises, it will be very rapid and very quick. So that is why the QRS complex that will be generated, okay, that will have a very short interval, which is less than 3 small squares. Okay, we will come to how each of it is generated. Okay, for now, this is what you remember. So this is about the conduction system of the heart. So let's say, and there is some disease wherein the SA node could not fire. So if the SA node is not firing, that means there should be some part of the heart that is going to start firing. It has to take over the work of the SA node, which is that the next part is the AV node. Okay, so this AV node, however, there is only one small problem with this. The AV node cannot fire at the rate at which the SA node fires. Okay, so the AV node will fire only at a rate of about 40 to 60. Okay, this is the intrinsic rate of firing of the AV node. Okay, so if the AV node fails, then the bundle branches and the Purkinje fibers take over. They fire at about 20 to 40 milliseconds, 20 to 40 beats per minute. So this is important because there can be disease processes that can affect the conducting system. So that is when the conduction system has the ability to generate its own rhythm, which we call as automaticity. Okay. So if that is clear. So this is very quick summary. So from the AV node, we have this bundle, then you have the bundle branches, and then you have the fascicles. And then finally, we have Purkinje fibers. Everywhere there is only Purkinje fibers, whether you activate the LV or the RV. So once the impulse comes here, so we have in the heart something called as an intercalated disc. These intercalated discs have gap junctions. They have something called as gap junction. These gap junctions are electrical windows between the muscular cells that help in a faster conduction of the impulse. Okay, these gap junctions are made of a protein called as connexon. I'll show it later. Okay, so that is how the impulse from one cell transmits to the other cell via the intercalated disc. Okay, the intercalated disc is a unique feature of the cardiac myocyte. So coming to the action potential that is generated. So this is very important to understand the role of electrolytes as well as how the autonomic nervous system can affect the heart. Okay, so let's see. So this is the action potential in the pacemaker cell, which is the SA node, AV node, or Purkinje fibers. And this is at the level of the myocardial cells, which is the myocardium, which is the muscular cells. Okay, so we'll see here. So there is here a very important phenomenon that is happening called as phase 4 depolarization. Okay, so I want you guys to remember this conduction system because understanding this helps us to understand arrhythmias better, helps us to understand electrolyte disorders better, about the role of how electrolytes can affect the heart. Okay, so here there is phase 4 depolarization, which means that you see here phase 4 is the resting membrane potential, but somehow here there is depolarization that occurs in phase 4. Okay, so this is a peculiarity in the pacemaker cells. Okay, so what happens is here there is a current channel that opens. Okay, that is called as a funny current. So here you see it is marked here. So it is marked here. It is called as a funny current. So as the impulse reaches somewhere around 65, 70, it starts opening up. That is when some amount of sodium enters. So when sodium enters, the resting membrane potential becomes a little more positive, which means from minus 60, it becomes somewhere around minus 50, minus 55. At that point, the calcium channels start opening. So the calcium channels open. Once the calcium channel opens, it creates an action potential. And then at this point, calcium channels close and potassium channels are open and potassium is coming out. And as it reaches again around 65, 70, again spontaneous depolarization happens. Okay, so this is about action potential in the nodal tissue. There is one more peculiar clinical importance of this. This is the IF current. Okay, so there was a drug that was liberated that can block the IF current. If you block the IF current, it prolongs the duration. So it prolongs the duration and it reduces the heart rate. Okay, so if the heart rate reduces, the diastole is prolonged. So this helps in angina. So this drug was called as ivabradine. Ivabradine. Bradine because it causes bradycardia, and probably Iva is because it causes an IF current suppression. Okay, and this hyperpolarization mediated phenomenon is also present in the retina of the eye, wherein you have the CGMP activation. So this currents are also present in the eye. So that is why when you give ivabradine, you can have some amount of visual effects. So that process, that phenomenon is called as luminous phenomenon. Okay, so it is called as luminous phenomenon. Okay, so that is about the action potential in the myocytes. It's called as luminous phenomenon. So I want you to remember only so much about the action potential. Fine. So coming to the myocyte action potential, I think we all know this. So the phase 0 is mediated by sodium here. Phase 1, what happens? The sodium closes, calcium opens in, and potassium efflux happens. So both are balanced by each other. Therefore, it maintains a plateau. And then there is only efflux of potassium, and then the cell reaches its resting membrane potential. Okay. So to remember that whenever there is potassium disturbance, it will affect the phase 3 or it affects the repolarization in the ECG. Okay. So we will go to the next. So I'll be telling you the important concepts and we'll generate the ECG on our own. Okay. So until now, is it clear? Until now, is it clear about the action potentials and all? Everything is clear, no? Until now? Yeah, fine, fine. Okay. So we'll go to the next concept, which is the concept of leads and electrodes. Yeah, yeah. We'll go to the concept of leads and electrodes. So always remember, what do we mean by depolarization? Depolarization means it is an increase in the positive charges inside the cell. Okay, so that is what we should remember. Increase in the positive charges inside the cell is called as depolarization. And the negative charges increase in the cell, it is called as repolarization. So with this being clear, we will understand what is a vector. We all know what is a vector. Vector is any substance which has a magnitude and direction. It is a quantity which is having magnitude and direction. Okay. So this is a vector. So it's an electrical vector, which means, so see the direction, it has a direction, it's moving towards one direction and it is carrying a positive charge in its head. Okay. So in the direction it is going, it has a positive charge. Okay. So remember this concept now. So whenever there's a positive charge, so let's say I have a camera here that is going to record this activity. So when the activity is coming towards me, it's a positively charged. Think it in a day-to-day example like this. So when you see your best friend coming towards you, so your best friend is having full all happy, bubbly person coming towards you. So when they're coming towards you, you feel naturally happy. So when you feel naturally happy, there's a positive deflection. You also feel positive. Okay. So this is a positive wave that is going to be created. Okay. So then what happens at the other end? Okay. So at the other end, let's say you are here. Okay. So at this point, it is going to be that your positively charged friend is saying you goodbye. Okay. So they have come to meet you and then they're going back home. So they're going back home. So you're going to miss them. So the positive charge is going to reduce and you feel a little sad. So that is negative charge. That is going to be a negative charge. Okay. Remember that whenever the lead is placed perpendicular to the movement of the vector, it creates a biphasic wave. So initially it will be positive and then it will be negative. The reason being, as it comes towards here, so here it creates a positive wave. And then what happens from here, it is going to leave the electrode. So that time it creates a negative wave. So that's why it creates a biphasic wave here. Okay. So this is an important concept to remember. Okay. So we'll go to the next part. Okay. So this is what I was telling you that time. So the SI node is a dominant pacemaker because of the intrinsic firing rate. Okay. So when this fires at a very high rate, what it does is it inhibits the other pacemakers because you don't want the other pacemakers to fire. Okay. So it inhibits the other pacemakers. So this is one of the important functions in the SI node. Okay. So as the impulse comes, the other parts are inhibited. Okay. So this is what I was telling. I'll show you. So as the impulse comes from one cell, as one cell is activated, the impulse moves on from one cell to the other cell. And these are the electrical windows or the gap junctions made up of a protein called as connexon. Okay. So if that is clear, we will see about the waves, intervals and segments. So here we are seeing three things. So we are seeing here a P wave, a QRS complex. Whenever there is one or more waves in a particular deflection, it is called as a complex. So QRS complex, that is why it's called as a complex. Then we have the T wave and then we have the U wave. Okay, so these are the components of an ECG. Okay, and these represent specific activities in the heart. Okay, so we will see what does P wave represents. So I'm sure everyone knows the P wave represents an atrial depolarization, which means here it is shown the atria is activated. Okay, both the atria are activated. Okay, but very important to note that the SA node is electrically silent, in the sense we cannot measure the SA nodal activity based on the ECG. On the ECG, we don't get an SA nodal activity. The SA node activates the immediate neighbor is the atrium. So based on the atrium, we say whether the SA node is the dominant pacemaker, or is the SA node is firing constantly, or is it some other focus that is acting as the pacemaker. So that is why we use the P wave. Okay. So this is how the P wave is. So this is P wave is going to be activated. So this is atrial depolarization. So then what happens is the ventricle is going to be activated. So we will see each part. So why the Q wave forms, why the R wave forms, and why the S wave forms. But for now, let's remember that it is the ventricular depolarization. Ventricle is activated electrically. Okay. Followed by that, the ventricle is going to get repolarized, which means it is going to take a little more rest. So ventricular repolarization. Okay. And then there is U wave. The clear reason why a U wave is formed is not known yet. There are multiple theories. Okay. So this is what is the waves. So we will see how each wave is formed. Okay. So here, let's say this is the cross section of the heart. Okay. So you're seeing here the spinous processes in the vertebra. Okay. And this is the spinal cord. Okay. So that means this is a posterior part. Okay. And this is anterior. I'm viewing it like this from top. From top, I've taken a photo. So that means this is the anterior most part, which is the right ventricle. This is why it is important. That is why when we check the parasternal heave, it indicates the right ventricular enlargement, because it is easily palpable, because it is most anterior. It is most anterior here. Okay. Then followed by that, there is a LV here that is there. Followed by that, there is the right atrium here, and then there is a left atrium here. Okay. So whenever there is an electrical activation that is going to happen, so first the RA is going to get activated, then the impulse is going to go posteriorly. Okay. So let's say I have a lead here. Okay. I have a camera here. So initial activity is going to be like this. Agreed? So it is going to be a depolarization. So if it is a depolarization, I'm going to get a positive deflection. Followed by that, what is happening? There is impulse that is going away from me. That means it is going to be a negative deflection, because a positive charge is going to leave me. Okay. So then we are going to have a negative deflection. So this creates a biphasic wave. Okay. This is a normal P wave in up to V3 lead. V1 to V2, V3 can have like this biphasic P waves, which is absolutely normal. When you see that, don't think it is abnormal, it is absolutely normal. If it moves the cutoff, if it goes beyond the cutoff, then it becomes enlargement. Otherwise, a biphasic P wave is completely normal in V1 to V3. Now we understood why a biphasic P wave is formed. Okay. So we'll take the same thing. So this is one more representation. So this is P1, which is the right atrial activation, and then the left atrial activation. Okay. So that is what I was telling you. So the first activity is going to be the RA activation. Okay, this is going to be the RA, and then this is going to be the left atrium, because it is going posteriorly. Okay, so that means if I want to look at the left atrial enlargement or any changes in the left atrium, I look at the negative deflection. And if I want to look at the RA changes, I look at the positive deflection. Okay, fine. If this is clear, we'll go to the next concept, which is the QRS complex. So once we found the P wave, the atria was depolarized, it activated it, and then the AV nodal delay was there, so represented by the isoelectric line along with the P wave. This whole thing was the PR interval, which represents the entire impulse from the SA node till the AV node. Okay, and then it came and activated the ventricle. So the first part to get activated is the interventricular septum. Okay, and it has a peculiar way of activation for reasons not very clear. So this is some variation in the electrical windows that are there on the left side and the right side. So there are some electrical windows here. So through which the first activation in this is in this direction, which is shown by here V1. This is the initial vector. So that means any leads that are placed here, you'll see that the positive wave is going away from them. Okay, so that means it will create a small wave. Okay, so this is what is responsible for the Q wave. Okay, so that is responsible for the Q wave. And then what happens? And then this part of the interventricle is going to be activated. Okay, this part of the ventricle is going to be activated. Once this is activated, it is going to activate in this direction. Since the LV mass, you can see very clearly here, the LV mass is more than the RV mass. So hence, the impulse will go more in that direction. So we get the next wave, which is in this direction, which is the vector. It's called the main vector. This is the second part. So this, if I place a lead here, I'm going to get a R wave. Okay, so this is going to generate my Q wave, and this lead will generate a Q wave, followed by that a tall R wave. Okay, and then what happens? From here, the impulse is going to go in the posterior direction. It's called as the base of the heart. Okay, it's called as the base of the heart. It is going to activate the base of the heart. It is going to activate the base of the heart. What is going to happen? The impulse is going away from it, so it is going to create a negative deflection. So this is the S wave. Okay, so I'm sure we know what is Q, R, and an S. Fine. I think I have some questions that are there. You want me to repeat? You want me? Okay. There's a lag, is it? There is a lag? Yeah, I'll repeat the QRS. Fine. I'll repeat the QRS. Okay, fine. Oh, okay. It's not very clear. Am I not very clear? Okay. 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 You want me to go a little slow? Okay. 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 I'll go a little slow. Fine. Fine. Okay. Fine. Okay. Video live, but not audio. Yeah. Okay. I'll start with the QRS complex. Fine. Okay. So the first wave that is going to be generated is the Q wave. The Q wave represents the septal activation. The first activation is going to be from the left to the right. So let's say I have an electrical window here. I have a lead here. So there's a camera here that is going to see. So it is going to see that a positive charge is going to leave away from me. So it creates a negative charge. So it creates a negative deflection. So this forms the Q wave. Okay. Following that, what happens? The septum is going to be activated. After the septum is activated, the ventricle is going to be activated, the major portion of the ventricle. See here, the muscle mass of the LV is more than the muscle mass of the RV. That is why the net direction will be towards where there is more mass. So there is more deflection in the air. So this is going to be the next direction. So this is the next direction that is there, which is the R wave. So if I have the same lead here, so the impulse is going to come towards it. So this is going to be a positive deflection. Okay. Following that, what happens? Following that, what happens? QRS with respect to cross-section view of the chest you want. Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that also. Fine. So following this, what happens? The basal part of the ventricle is going to be activated. So from here, it is going to go posteriorly. So as it goes posteriorly, it creates another wave, which is called as the S wave. Okay, so we have the Q, R, and an S. So the initial vector here that was there is going to create a Q wave, and then it is going to create followed by an R wave, and then there is going to be the S wave. So you see Q, R, and an S. Okay. So there is a very interesting phenomenon that is there called as the tau wave. Okay. Tau wave is just an atrial repolarization wave. So what happens is, you see here, this is a P wave. So which is atrial depolarization. And then there is atrial repolarization also happening. But then it is not visible. Reason being, it is going to submerge with the QRS complex. It is going to submerge with the QRS complex. That is why you don't get a very good atrial repolarization wave that is going to be seen. Okay. So the clinical relevance of this we will discuss when we have arrhythmias. Okay. So this is about atrial repolarization wave or the tau wave. Okay. And then after this, what happens? There is going to be repolarization on the ventricle. Okay. So this is how it appears. So there is, so that means we'll make one generalization here, which means that the actual QRS should be a little higher because there is a negative wave that is happening. The QRS seems to be a little pulled down. Okay. So if I take another process wherein by chance the atrial repolarization wave is in this direction, that means the QRS can be a little elevated from the baseline. Okay. So this can give us an appearance like the QRS is a little elevated. So there can be something like an ST segment elevation. Okay. Even if you have not understood what is happening here, it's all right. Okay. So this is important when we have some arrhythmias. Okay. Otherwise, there is nothing to worry. So it is normal phenomenon that is happening. Okay. What is the difference between depolarization and repolarization is, you see here, simultaneously multiple sites are going to get activated in depolarization, whereas repolarization is a little slower process. Okay. Okay. So this is one of the features of repolarization. The next feature is, we'll see here. So we see here the endocardium to epicardium. So if I'm going to activate the QRS complex, it is from inside to outside. It is going to be from inside to outside. Whereas the is with respect to individual leads. Yes, sure. So I'm just generalizing it. I just want to show how each wave is generated and what each wave represents. Maybe in tomorrow's class, I'll show you with respect to the 360 degree of the heart. In each lead, why something is, I'm coming to that only, why T wave is positive. So someone asked me this very good question. So in general, repolarization in general is a negative process. That is why whenever we draw action potential also, it's something like this. Repolarization is a negative process. But then why is it positive? So you see here in the lead set is positive. The reason is here. We understand here. So we see the direction of the current. You see here, the depolarization happens from the endocardium to the epicardium. Okay. So that means from inside to outside, this is going to be the activation. Okay. But now, how is the repolarization? You read here, it is epicardium to the endocardium. That means, so if I say I've placed a lead here, okay, so the initial impulse is going to come towards me, which is depolarization. That means it has a positive charge here. Okay, that is understood. So then what happens? The next part is the repolarization is going to happen. So let me place the same electrode here because this is the surface here. So then what happens? This is going to be a negative charge. You see, it's a negative charge. Repolarization is a negative charge. Negative charge is going to go away from me. Negative charge is going to go away from me. If negative is going away from me, what is the deflection you are going to get? It will be positive or negative. If a negative charge is going away, it is going to be positive or negative. Yes, yes, yes. Negative charge is going away. Think like, yeah, think that your best friend is like the person you are not very familiar or fond of. They are going away from you, so you feel happy. So it is positive. Yes. So that is the reason why the T wave is positive. Okay. That is the reason why T wave is positive. If you have understood this concept well, we'll go to the next thing. So this is one of the important concepts to understand. Okay. Clinically, it doesn't make much of a significance, but it is important to understand why. Because everything has a reason and everything has a clinical relevance. Okay. So then we have something called as waves and intervals. Okay, I'm sure we all know what is a P wave, QRS, T wave, all that. I'll come to the next thing. There's something called as QT interval. Okay, I want you to know what is QT interval and how to measure the QT interval, because this is important. Everyone knows the QT interval prolonged causes arrhythmias and all, but I want to know how do you measure the QT. So this is the recommendation. Okay, so how do you do that is, so you take the T wave. Okay, so wherever is the T wave, you draw a slope like this. Okay, it should be a straight line. So how it is shown here, the red line here. So you draw the slope and you draw where it intersects with the baseline here. You draw a horizontal line where these two meet. Okay, so you take a T wave and draw a tangent like this straight. You draw a tangent like this. So it is going to intersect at some point in the baseline here. Somewhere it is going to intersect. And then you draw a horizontal line. Okay, so when you draw a horizontal line, these two will meet at some point. Okay, the horizontal line you can take as the PR segment. So you take this PR segment and along that you draw this horizontal line. So when you draw this horizontal line, the point where it meets, okay, so this point is the end of the T wave. This is how you mark the end of the T wave. So the end of the T wave is here. So the next thing is you're going to take the onset of the Q wave till the end of the T wave. That is interval. Okay, onset of the Q wave till the end of the T wave. This is the QT interval. Okay, QT interval. Okay, the QT interval has a lot of significance because in case if it is prolonged too much, that means what happens is, you see here. So if I'm going to draw an action potential here, okay. So if I'm prolonging it like this, okay. So I'm prolonging it like this, that is what is going to happen. So if I prolong this, the QT interval is going to be prolonged. So let's say I draw an action potential like this. So it is a little prolonged. Let's say this phase is a little prolonged. Okay. So this part until here will be my refractory period, which is absolute refractory period, which means any impulse I generate here, any impulse I give here at this point, there will be absolutely no action potential generated because all the sodium channels are closed. Okay, but here this is called as a relative refractory period. Okay, so relative refractory period. The only problem with this relative refractory period is if I give a very high dose of current, this can generate a action potential. And if it generates an action potential, high chances that it can suddenly go into an arrhythmia. Okay, so this relative refractory period, the significance is that. Okay, so if I prolong my QT interval, the risk of this happening is more. That the impulse entering any impulse, any small ectopic that comes and it activates at the level of the relative refractory period can generate an arrhythmia. If you not understood this relative refractory period, maybe I'll repeat it at the end. Okay, so this is what is QT interval. Okay, so QT interval, you know how to measure the T wave, the end of the T wave, you know how to measure the QT interval, and which leads to measure. So you are going to measure in lead 2 and lead V5. Okay, you're going to measure in lead 2 and lead V5. Okay, we'll see if time permits. I'll take leads today or I'll take it tomorrow. Okay, so this is about QT interval. Okay, this is QT interval. What are the other intervals we know? So we have PR interval, which is the onset of P wave till the onset of the QRS complex. So any interval will have one wave and one isoelectric segment. So segment is a flat line. Segment is a flat line. Interval is one flat line plus one wave. So this is an interval. Okay. This is about QT interval. QT interval. Okay. That's about QT interval. So you will measure it in lead 2 and lead V5. So these are the important ones, which is the PR interval, which indicates that from the atria to the ventricle, the impulse is passing in a normal manner until the AV nodal delay that is happening. So this whole thing is the PR interval from the atria to the AV nodal delay. That is the PR interval. Okay, from the atria to the AV node is the PR interval. So that is about the PR interval. Then there is the QT interval. Okay. So this is the normal definitions. So you see the heart rate is 60 to 100. We all know this. The PR interval, which is 0.12 to 0.20 seconds. The QRS complex, I said, is less than 3 millimeters. So we'll generalize it here. Okay. Then the QT interval is said to be less than half of the RR interval or 10 large boxes. Okay. So remember this value is important, 60 to 100. PR interval you can remember as 3 to 5 small boxes. 3 to 5 small boxes. Okay, 3 to 5 small boxes. QRS is going to be less than 3, and you multiply this 5 by 2, so you get 10. So which is 10 large boxes. Okay, this is going to be 10 large boxes, which is the QT interval. Fine. This is the normal waves and intervals. Fine. So I have some queries here. Let me answer the queries. Yeah. So you want me to repeat what is the interval and what is the segment again? Okay, fine. Okay. So very simple. We'll take the same thing. So this wave here, so we have an isoelectric line. Okay. So what is a segment is just a single activity. So in the sense, let's say this part from the end of the S wave till the onset of the T wave. Okay. This part is called as a ST segment. It's called as a ST segment. Okay. It's called as ST segment. Okay. If I want QT interval, so it is shown here. So the onset of the wave, Q wave, till the end of the T wave. So it's called as an interval. So interval usually will have, and this is isoelectric. That means there is no change in the deflections. So it is just a flat line. So this is a segment. Usually segments are just isoelectric. Okay. Isoelectric means just a flat line. So from here, the onset of the Q wave till the end of the T wave. So that means there is one line along with one complex, one wave. So this is a QT interval. So this is a QT interval. QT interval. Okay. So if it's a PR interval, let's say PR interval. So from the onset of the P wave till the onset of the QRS complex. If you may ask, sir, this is only a Q wave here. Why are you calling it an R wave? The reason being, R wave is commonly seen in most of the leads, but Q wave is not seen in all the leads. That is why generally in colloquially we call it as PR interval, because the R wave is commonly seen in most of the leads. That is why it's called as PR interval. Technically, if there is a Q wave, you call it as a PQ interval. Okay, but since it may not be seen in all leads, it's called as PR interval. Okay. So I have one more question. Let's take questions. Yeah. Why QT interval has two waves? Because QT interval, we are going to measure the entire ventricular activity, which is, yeah, I'll come to the U wave also. After this will be the U wave. Yeah, I'll come to the U wave. Yes. QT interval has two waves. There is no specific reason why they have taken two waves. Okay. But we are going to look at the entire ventricular activity. That is what is the QT interval. See, you are going to have the ventricular depolarization here. You are going to have a repolarization here. This whole thing is the QT interval. So this is what is there in the, that is what is going to represent. Fine. Entire ventricular activity you are going to measure. That is QT. Fine. So what happens in the QT is going to be prolonged. So here you see here, this is a normal QT interval. Okay, this is a normal QT interval. Okay, so it varies between males and females. Okay, so this is a chart showing the QT interval. So what are the possibilities? So there is something called as long QT syndrome. So congenitally, if the QT is long, I said you what can happen. There can be some impulse that can come in the relative refractory period of the heart. So that time it can generate arrhythmias. Okay. Similarly, there is a short QT syndrome. This is congenital. This short QT is congenital. Hypercalcemia can cause a short QT, but short QT syndrome as such is a separate entity. Okay, it is more commonly recognized and described. This also can cause sudden arrhythmias. Okay, what is the problem when you have a long QT? So this is the classical ECG that is going to be described. So all of you would have read this for sure. It's called as torsade D points. It's called as TDP, torsade day point. So what does it exactly mean? So you see here, so you see this wave here, you see it's like this, and then this is going to go in this direction, like this. So then it seems to cross over. Again, it goes to increase. At this point, it crosses over, and then again, it's going to increase. So that means at one point here, there is a crossover that is happening. That means it seems that the activities are spinning around a single point. So from here, it is going to increase like this, and then from here, it is going to increase in this direction. Okay, so this is called as a torsade rhythm. Okay, this is a classical feature when you have a long QT. Whenever the QT interval is prolonged, high chances of this being generated. Okay, you see roughly what we said, it should be the half of the RR interval. So roughly you draw the RR interval here. What is recommended is the T wave should end before that. But you see the T wave is almost going till here. Okay, so that is why the QT interval is prolonged. When you have QT prolongation, this can generate. And this is treated with magnesium sulfate. Okay. Okay. So that is for today. Any doubts? I'll take it. And then we'll see some practice ECGs. Broad QRS with irregular RR with 3 polymorphs of QRS is torsade D point. Why epicardium undergoes repolarization first when it is last to depolarize? Reason being, see, what happens is the electrical activity is followed by a mechanical activity. Okay, so during repolarization that is about to, even it is last to depolarize, yeah. So what happens is there is going to be a mechanical contraction of the heart. Following that, there should be a relaxation. The electrical activity is not synchronous with mechanical activity. There is a small time gap. Okay, so when the intraventricular pressures are more, you can't expect the endocardium to repolarize first. From outside, it comes inside. It is easier from outside to coming inside. Relative refractory period is whole of the QT interval or just the T wave, part of the T wave. It's not the whole of the T wave, whole of the QT interval. It's just a part of the T wave. Yeah, not center, a late part of the T wave. I'll add that in the tomorrow's this one. I'll correlate that for you. Okay. Yeah. Any doubts anyone had? I'll just see, not fully a segmented interval while calculating heart rate. Yeah. We'll see heart rate calculations tomorrow. How to calculate heart rate in each of that. All that. Okay. What is the crossing over in torsade in the video? Yeah, we'll upload this to YouTube. We are recording this, so we will be uploading this to YouTube. Yeah. One example of heart rate calculation. Yeah. What was James pathway, sir? Okay, I'll come to James pathway. Fine. So someone, very good observation. Whoever has done that, very good. So are you all clear what is happening at the level of the heart? Why each wave is generated? That is what I wanted to tell you today. Each wave and the intervals, if you know that, that becomes easier. So once you know what is happening exactly, other things will get added onto it. Yeah, U wave, yes, yes. I'll come to U wave. Fine, fine. Okay, fine. So someone wanted James pathway. I'll come to that and U wave. So those two are remaining. I'll talk about James pathway and U waves. Okay, fine. So this is called as James pathway. I don't know if all of you have heard of this. Okay, see, this is what is going to happen. Let's say from the internodal tracts. So this is the AV node, right? From the AV node, by chance, so normal impulse is going to go from AV node to the His bundle. Let's say by chance from here itself it bypassed, but it goes inside the His bundle. Okay. So before it reaches the AV node, it is going to bypass. That means what can happen is the PR interval, what is expected to happen? What will happen to the PR interval in that case? You tell me what is going to happen. 1 second. I'll open the chat so that it becomes easier. Yeah. No delay. Yeah. The delay is yes. Yes. Someone is asking me a question whether how to tell whether the chest leads are correctly placed or not. Yes, we'll come to that also. I'm not gone into everything at once because I don't want to put too much in one day. We'll see it one by one. Okay. Yeah. Someone said with respect to cross section. Yeah, that I'll tell you. Fine. Yeah. So the PR interval will be shortened. Everyone is correct. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Someone has answered. If leads are placed wrong, the P wave and AVR will be upright. Okay. Fine. Okay. So someone has said it will be shortened. So this James pathway was called as Lown-Ganong-Levine syndrome. Whenever there was a James bypass tract, like how classically we used to say was there is no delta wave, but just a short PR interval with a normal QRS. But then now the presence of James pathway itself is debatable. Okay, so this was initially that was there. Now many of the books they don't give about the existence of a Lown-Ganong-Levine. Okay. Yeah. Someone said about U wave they wanted. I'll tell you what is a U wave. So U wave represents capillary muscle repolarization is what is one of the theories proposed. Okay, so U wave is usually positive. Importance to remember is there are two things important in the U wave. So if you have inverted U waves, it can signify an ischemia. Okay, and positive U waves, if at all you are seeing on the ECG, just look at the potassium levels. Sometimes early change would be a presence of a hypokalemia. When you have hypokalemia, you can have U waves. Okay, otherwise also you can have, let's say the heart rate is somewhere around 70s, 60s to 70s. That time, physiologically you can have these U waves. If it is more than 1.5 millimeters, they become very significant. That time you will have to look at the secondary causes, if at all there are any. Most common is look at electrolytes. Okay, that is about U wave. Okay, so you wanted to know how someone had asked me about electrodes and its placement. I'll come to that. We'll discuss about lead placements. All about leads we have one more, leads and electrodes. J point importance here. The importance of J point is whenever there is an elevation in the J point, that means there is some electrical abnormality at the level in the repolarization phase. Since from the beginning of repolarization, there is some abnormality that is happening. So whenever there is an elevation in the J point, so they say we'll have to look at the secondary causes. So there are many causes for elevation of the J point. Most life-threatening one we all know is MI, myocardial infarction, especially ST elevation myocardial infarction has an elevation in the J point. That is one thing you have to look at. That's all. Okay. We'll see all that. Yeah, injury current. Yes, someone has said current of injury. Yeah. Agreed. Okay. So all that is clear. Whatever we discussed until now is clear, no? If it is clear, we'll quickly see some questions and we'll end the session for today. Okay. Let's see the questions. Yeah, all is clear. Fine. So let's calculate the heart rate. Someone had asked me how to calculate heart rate. So calculate the heart rate for this patient. And one more important thing I forgot to tell you, very important. I'll come to this tomorrow also. The important thing is you have to look at a lot of things when you see the ECG. Not just seeing this everyone will see, but many times these things are missed. You see this standardization. Is it correct or is it wrong? Yeah, I see some answers. Yes, yes. Time is prolonged. Yes, it should be 25. Yes, correct, correct. So those are the first things you should identify. Yes, very good. Everyone is correct. So those are the first things you should identify, because your interpretation will completely change if the basic reason how the ECG is taken itself is wrong. Okay, so this is one important point to make. Okay, very important. Okay, let's assume that this is normal. Okay, someone wanted to practice heart rate calculation. So let's assume this is normal. So can you calculate the heart rate for me? So it's given here, you see, it's 50 millimeter per second, which is completely wrong. Okay, assume that this is completely normal. Okay, and then you calculate the heart rate. So 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20. So this is very low. Okay. If I take, this is going to be normal. I'm just taking it for an example. Okay. So if I take 300 divided by the RR interval, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 300 divided by the RR interval. How much is the RR interval? Which was 10. So which means it is 30. So this is the heart rate. Okay. So let's see how many of you have got it right. Yeah, 30. Very good. Very good. 33, 30. Yeah. Very specifically, someone has answered 33. Okay, that's fine. 30, 30, 30. Yeah, everyone correct. Good, 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 good. Okay. Right. So, can you identify who is this person? I'll keep it like this only so that I'll be able to see the screen easier. Yeah. Can you tell me, is RR interval seen only in V5? No, no, it's seen in all the leads. It's seen in all the leads. RR interval means one R wave to the other R wave. You will have R wave in every lead, no? Most commonly we take in lead 2. Yeah, Eindhoven. Yes, yes. Good, 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 good. Good. Okay, good. What is this? What is this? Yes. Mm. Yeah, limb leads, ECG machine, limb leads, augmented leads, every answer is there. Okay, correct. Okay, yeah, this is an ECG machine that was there, early ECG machine. Fine. Okay, fine. Yeah, correct. Everyone is correct. It is limb leads only, ECG machine. Yeah. Some other answer. Yeah. Why will the direction of each wave change with different leads? Yes, because it is like a camera. Okay, I'll switch on my video so that it might be a little easier to understand. Fine. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Okay. You see here, this is my heart. Okay, this is my heart. This is my heart. Okay. So now, if I'm going to place a camera here, if I'm going to place a camera here, if I'm going to place a camera here, okay. So activity is going to come in this direction. Let's say it's in this direction. That means if it's coming in this direction, this camera here will see it is coming towards it. This camera here may not see the same activity. This camera here may not see the same activity. Correct? So this is why each wave when it is coming, it is going to be different because the camera that is seeing it is going to be different. Okay. Hope that answered your question. That's clear, no? You understood why each direction will change with each lead? Yeah, yeah, fine, fine, fine. Okay, okay. Fine. So there is one more ECG I have. I don't know what is wrong with this my computer. Yeah, fine. So let's see here. Let's see who will identify the diagnosis. Let's see. Any takers? MI. Okay. Someone says MI. TO is inverted. AVR, atrial repolation is positive. Extreme axis deviation. ESVT, WPW, delta wave in AVL. Okay, so I have a lot of answers. Okay, so we'll understand this ECG. Okay, so let's not jump into the diagnosis. Okay, so we'll see from one by one. I don't know why this thing is coming here. Okay, so let's see here. So let's say the calculation of heart rate. Although today is not intended for that, but still we'll just see. Okay, roughly we'll see. So if this is my RR interval, so 1, 2, 2.5. So somewhere around 140 to 150. So I have a tachycardia. Okay, that is the first thing I have. Okay, so you see, this my standardization is correct. So I saw that first. That is good. And then the next thing I would see is AVR. So you see AVR is negative. The P wave is negative in AVR. Reason being, we'll come to the leads. Okay, so AVR should be negative. Okay. Fine. Then you see here, are you seeing some slopes here? Okay, so next thing is we'll see the intervals. Okay, this is how you approach actually ECG. You look at the standardization, then look at whether the technically the ECG is correct by looking at lead AVR. So look at lead AVR, so there is no lead misplacements. Then you start to proceed with the interpretation. So you look at lead 2. So you see lead 2. So lead 2, there is a small slurring here. Okay. But then you see lead 3. Okay. You see here, there is a small P wave that is there. And then you're seeing a wave like this here. Okay. At the corresponding point, at the exact same point, you're seeing a deflection like this here. Okay. You're seeing a deflection like this here. And then you see a very small P wave. Okay. At the end of the P wave itself, it is taking off. That means the PR interval is short. Only one square we have here, but the normal PR interval is 3 to 5 small squares. Okay, so that means the PR interval is short. Okay, and then we have a deflection like this here. Okay, so what do you think this is now? I've given you clues. Let's see the answers now. Yes, good, 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 good. Standardization, won't need explanation. Okay, fine. Yeah, someone says atrial fibrillation. So atrial fibrillation means atria is not there. So if atria is not there, that means if atria is not there, if atria is not firing, that means P wave won't be there. Here we have a P wave. So we have a delta wave here. That short PR that was there. Okay, then there was a good delta wave that was seen. What I showed you was a delta wave. That upstroke you saw, that is called as a delta wave. Yes. So it is WPW. Good. So that is WPW. Okay. Yeah. Heart block. If there is a heart block, usually the heart rate will be a little lower. You see, there is a tachycardia here. Correct. So unlikely to be a heart block. Okay, so it is a WPW. We call it just as a pre-excitation pattern, or we call it as a WPW pattern. We don't call it a syndrome until and unless patient has symptoms. Like, let's say patient had recurrent palpitation, recurrent syncope. So those are the things that make it this one. Fine. Okay. Yeah. I think I'll end it for today. Yeah, pre-excitation. Someone says good. So Ashray, yeah, pre-excitation. Yes. Fine. Okay. Yeah. We'll end it for today. I hope you all understood what the basics is. Conduction pathway. Once more at the end, please. Okay. You want me to explain the conduction pathway? Fine. Anything else you want? Okay. Fine. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Standardization and T wave. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Okay. I'll finish in 5 minutes. So what standardization is? The norm at which the initial ECG was made, which is, see here, we see two things here. So one is along the x-axis, one is along the y-axis. X-axis is time, y-axis is amplitude. So the ECG moves at 25 millimeter per second. It moves at 25 millimeter per second. So this is what is shown in this ECG here. So you see here, it shows this is the ECG moving at the speed, which is 25 millimeter per second. Okay. And so that is one thing. And the second thing is the amplitude. Okay. By default, it is 10 millimeters 1 millivolt. This is how the ECG is made. Any deviations from this, it has its own reasons. That time we'll do such ECGs. Otherwise, we don't usually do. Reason being, our entire interpretation and our calculations will change. Let's say if 50 millimeter is the speed, then if we, let's say we calculated that heart rate like the previous ECG, so it came as 30, but then it has to be doubled because it was at 50 millimeter per second. So that is why our calculations will change. Okay, so that is about standardization, right? So someone had asked about standardization. Yeah, clear, no? Standardization. Someone had asked. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Someone has asked why T wave is positive. Okay. It's very simple. T wave is just. I'm sure if you remember this, I'm sure you will understand. Okay. So I hope you know that. We'll see why T wave is positive. Yes. So initially, the depolarization in the ventricle happens from the endocardium to the epicardium. So it is a positive charge. So from inside to outside, positive charge is moving, and it is moving towards an electrode, which is positive. So the positive charge is coming towards me. So I'm going to feel happy. So it is going to be an R wave, which is positive. The exact opposite happens, which is a negative charge is going to go away from me because it is going from the epicardium to the endocardium. This is the direction of the repolarization. So a negative charge is going to go away from me. That time also I'll feel happy. So it comes a positive wave. That is why T wave is positive. Okay, clear? Okay. So for today we'll finish today's session. Tomorrow's session will be on leads, electrodes, how to identify lead misplacements, how to identify dextrocardia. All that we'll see tomorrow. Okay. Thank you everyone.